Welcome to episode 9 of Generosity Experience Live. On today's episode, how can nonprofits build a foundation of support? Featuring Jessica Johnson, Director of Customer Support at Neon One, and Shalia Phillips, Founder and Principal Consultant of SMP Nonprofit Consulting. And now, here's your host, Tim Sarantonio.
Welcome to September's episode of Generosity Experience Live, a live stream show where we look at the ways that nonprofiteers like you can get savvier about the ways that technology can connect you and your community around generosity. I'm your host, Tim Sarantonio, Director of Corporate Brand. I'm actually on site at the Association of Fundraising Professionals headquarters today in a special location. But here's the thing, no matter what or when you're going to watch our show, you're going to love the engaging and valuable conversation to come. If you are watching live with us today, please jump in the comments and share your thoughts throughout the show. Even just saying hello right now, do it. There's a really important reason why. We have a different giveaway for each episode. And one lucky winner for this month is going to win a free registration for Shalia's ABCs of Grant Writing course. This is a $497 value. In just a few minutes, we're going to be joined live by our special guests, Jessica Johnson and Shalia Phillips. But first, it's time for the big number. %19%. That's the percentage of giving attributed to foundations according to Giving USA. That's increased 3.4% over 2020, with more and more grant money flowing into communities across the United States. Within the world of foundations, there's a broad spectrum of how and why foundations exist. That number by Giving USA includes government grants, community foundations, as well as private foundations. The nuance here is that service fees paid by the government aren't necessarily counted in that, but there's still a fair amount of federal, state, and local giving that operates in a very different way than community foundations and private foundations. It's also fascinating to see how much of the zeitgeist around the perception of the nonprofit sector is driven by foundation giving. On television or movies, formal philanthropy will likely be represented through the lens of a foundation. Maya Rudolph portrays a Mackenzie Scott-like figure in the show Loot, where she gets pulled into the day-to-day workings of a foundation she didn't even know existed under her name. Let's take a look at a clip and drop.
Hello?
Molly Novak. I'm the executive director of your foundation.
Wait, what?
I was wondering if you wouldn't mind coming into the office tomorrow.
I have an office?
I thought the show was pretty funny. Drop in the comments if you've actually checked it out. The passionate debates about financial allocations of the fictional Wayne Foundation also are flooding Reddit, which is where a rich billionaire is beating up mentally ill people in the streets of Gotham. This is what people think about when they think about nonprofits sometimes. Foundations lay at the origin of both the sector itself, with some of the most interesting or influential innovations in giving coming from foundations, such as donor advised funds and community giving days. It's also interesting that even the origination of the critiques of our sector come from people that worked at foundations as opposed to in individual giving. Folks include Edgar Villanueva and Voulez as an example. But today, I actually don't want to focus too much on foundation giving itself. We're going to hear from Shalia Phillips. We're going to talk a lot more about that. She knows way more about that than me. What I actually want to focus on is the foundations of support that we need now in the sector. Much of this is rooted in how people join the nonprofit sector, where the skewed perception of foundation dollars impact can sometimes have disastrous results for new professionals given unrealistic goals and priorities. For me, much of my ability to merge the worlds of foundation and individual giving are connected to my first job in the nonprofit sector. Now, before I get into that, I'd actually want to hear about your origins. What year did you join the nonprofit sector, and drop in what maybe your first job was? I'll pause for that. Check the comments. I know we got Kathleen in there. She's part of she's going to go on the wheel because she asked a question. So that counts.
Yeah, Tim, I know you're going to share your experience here in just a moment, but we do want to encourage everyone who's watching live to jump in the comments. This is a really great prize that we're giving away for this episode 9. It's so great that we're going to be able to give that away right at the very end of the show. So don't hesitate. And you've seen, Tim, I've been able to put everybody's comments on the screen here. Kathleen said,
Kathleen's up. We got that. So she joined in 2016 as a volunteer. That's cool.
Kathleen, this is what the prize wheel looks like right now. It is Kathleen, and I'm going to add Kiana's name to that wheel.
See, there we go. There we go. We got it going. We're greasing the wheel.
So, Tim, take it away.
Awesome. See, that and that's actually really interesting, seeing both volunteers and then more dedicated jobs like capacity building and development coordinators. For me, I thought I was actually going to be an academic, specifically a labor historian. My entire life track was organized around this goal. So when I received the second round of rejection letters from the collection of schools that I applied to get a PhD at, many of which were in the Midwest, and why I was living in Chicago, I actually lost my sense of self. My father ended up flying to Chicago in order to knock some sense into me, and I ended up getting a job as a grant writer for a day labor organizing center operating out of Humboldt Park. In fact, I still have a copy of that Grant Writing for Dummies book that I bought in order to train myself. The year all of this went down was 2008. And the world shifted for me once again pretty quickly after taking that job. Most of our grants dried up. And I remember one particularly brutal gathering put on by a foundation for all the human service nonprofits working on causes like ours. We then had to pivot very quickly to individual giving. And for me, all I knew was that events were a thing that people did to raise money. That too long didn't read is that was not a fun time. But it taught me a lot about how the nonprofit sector actually works and laid the foundation for why I am deeply in love with what we do on a daily basis here. It's also the job where I first discovered the importance of technology. The organization didn't have an active website or social media presence, and I had absolutely no database to work with. My first exposure to nonprofit databases was downloading what I think was a Microsoft Access system that had about a 364-page PDF manual. I quickly abandoned that project because of how overwhelming it was. And thank you. I see a bunch of comments here. Look at that. Megan, 1993, theater house manager. Caitlin, visitor services associate. Love these. Love these. Thank you for commenting, folks. Keep it up. So when I talk about foundations and addressing how we can set leaders like you, like Megan, Caitlin, Kiana, and Kathleen, and others, how can we set them up for success? It's because I've lived it. I've lived through that feeling of waking up in the middle of the night with sweat pouring out of me and wondering how I'm going to pay my bills for the next month. I've lived through struggling with volunteers who know technology and actually get in the way of successful project implementations. It's also why there is great potential and promise in what a foundation represents to the sector. I believe very strongly in the democratizing power of individual giving, but we need to set people up for success from the get-go. And investing in general operational support, infrastructure, and training for nonprofit professionals and supporting the costs of critical technology needed to run those basic operations are where I hope we hear more conversations from foundations in the immediate future. That's also why I'm excited to have our Director of Customer Support join us shortly, because Jessica Johnson also knows the struggles of community nonprofits and their needs. What I think will be really exciting is to also help leaders like you understand how a technology company thinks about the differences between getting started, getting going, and long-term support. And that's how I think foundations can shift their thinking as well. There's different phases and evolution stages in the nearly 2 million nonprofits that operate in the US today. And I know much of this also impacts and influences philanthropy beyond the borders of the US. AFP has chapters and connections in Mexico, Canada, and beyond. It's right over there. Thinking about what a nonprofit needs at the right stage of their journey is a very important but difficult thing to do. It's also why established support infrastructure from both foundations and technology companies, especially if things are tightly aligned, is critical toward long-term success of people working in our sector, as well as establishing a vision of change that can permeate throughout society itself. Just a regular Thursday. I'm excited to get into it, but I do want to remind folks about our special giveaway this month. So let's hear about that again.
During today's episode, one lucky live viewer will win a free registration for Shalia Phillips' ABCs of Grant Writing course, a $497 value. This dynamic course is tailor-made for beginner grant writers and nonprofit professionals. With user-friendly tools, you'll master the fundamentals of grant writing, enabling you to craft compelling proposals and secure essential funding for your organization. Comment during today's episode to be entered to win. A winner will be announced at the end of the show. Join us for a special episode of Generosity Experience Live, Episode 10, on Thursday, October 10th, as we offer a special preview of what you can expect at Generosity Exchange 2024. We'll have surprise special guests and prize giveaways for GX registrants. Follow the link in the comments and click attending to be reminded as the show approaches.
Hey, Shalia, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Tim. How are you? Happy Friday Eve.
Happy Friday Eve. I know. It's a lot of fun. We're actually playing around with things today. I'm going to be talking to you first.
Okay.
Sounds
good.
Maybe I was supposed to put Jessica on first. I'm sorry about that.
Usual flow, Chris, is our internal, then external. But I am thrilled to talk to Shalia right now. So let's do it.
Always.
I think part of this is that it's establishing that kind of foundation of support. And so when we tap in Jessica, we can kind of almost hear like, great, like things are going, people are getting set. But a lot of times when I go into Facebook groups and stuff like that, you see people like begging for grants and stuff like of that. Like, how do I find grants? So I want to get into that.
Okay.
But first, tell us about you. People might not know. I am obviously glowing and telling people about how awesome you are, but talk about that.
Yeah, of course.
How did you get here?
Of course. So to the folks that I'm a new face in the room, my name is Shalia Phillips. I'm the founder and CEO of SMP Nonprofit Consulting. I have been in the nonprofit sector as a grant writer and fundraiser for the last 10 years, but working independently for the last 4 through my company. I was a great resignator. So if you're a great resignator or, have thought about it during the pandemic, let me know in the comments. I got my start actually in biology. A lot of folks don't know this. I actually went to school for biology with a minor in chemistry, found myself really just not fulfilled in the research world, but did a lot of writing. So I built a lot of technical and transferable skills that I use now. Went to grad school, did some volunteering at some local nonprofits, and boom, you know how it is when we're wearing multiple hats, folks find out you're good at writing. So I end up writing grants some way, somehow, and end up writing myself into my very first full-time job through a grant, a local grant here. I think it was a 6-figure through a major foundation here, and that's how I got my start. I did not know all the ins and outs or what I call the science of grant writing. I just knew that if you could reply to some prompts very good and tell the story, it was all she wrote for me. Since then, I've secured millions of dollars in funding and have grown my business from just a team of 1 to a team of 3. So shout out to all of those who are in their very beginnings. But if you're still in the nonprofit space of working in-house, we can talk a little bit about how to build your team, especially if you're working across multiple departments. So I'm super excited to be here today. I'm super excited to also share the ways that I've bumped my head so you don't have to. So grab your pen and paper for the entire conversation today. I'm sure it will be fruitful and full of nuggets for you all.
And drop questions that you have for Shalia around grants, please. This is going to be awesome. So let's start with a good one, because we're talking about kind of foundations in multiple ways. But one of the criticisms that we've seen is the lack of general operation support and things like that. In your opinion, what do you think is the best role that a foundation, and you can even start to give nuances on like the best type of foundations that might fit this role too.
Yeah.
Because they're not all the same. And grants are not all the same too. And you could even say, we're not even going to touch the government today. Like if you even, we're not going to touch the government.
Not because it's not a substantial, revenue stream. Government grants do a lot of good work in the community, but it has a lot of red tape.
Yeah.
And I want to stick more so to the conversation around general operating and just some other ways foundations can support nonprofits in this way as well.
So what do you think is the best role moving, in the year of 2024, moving forward? Where does the foundation support best fit?
Yeah, so foundation support best fits, as you mentioned, in general operating, but I would add this in multi-year general operating support. This does a few things. When I explain general operating grants to folks, we call it the ELI 5. Explain it to me like I'm 5. It's the money that goes where you need it to go without requiring a lot of reports, red tapes, and it's a trust-based, I don't want to say exchange, but it's a mutual trust-based exchange or gift, so to speak. Another way that I have found very beneficial, particularly for our clients, is in the area of capacity building and technical assistance. And if these terms are newer for you, let me break them down. So capacity building is when funders pay for a consultant, in a lot of cases, a grant writing consultant to come in and help you boost your operations, particularly your grant writing or your grants department, and build that over a certain percentage over, let's say, 6 months or a year at a time, which is really good if you're a smaller nonprofit. If you have folks on your team who don't necessarily have the enhanced grant writing skills to the degree of, getting proposals out consistently, we can help you build up your systems, your policies, procedures, and just your overall process to make that easier and make sure folks keep their hair, because this role can pull a lot of our hair out. And then in technical assistance, this is where we actually come alongside you, or it's either a done with you or a done for you approach, where we go in and either write your grant proposals, we can review your grant proposals, help you out with strategy, and just, really walk alongside you, or you can hand it off completely depending on the goals of the funder. We found those most beneficial for our clients simply because it gives them consistent access and touch points. But then the thing that I like, it's a saying, or I don't want to say if it's a proverb, but it's if you teach someone how to fish, they'll know how to eat for life. That gives me so much joy as a practitioner, because I don't want to just come in and do the work for you. I actually want to come in and coach you and walk alongside you to teach those skills, and give you the tools, workable tools that you can use day in and day out to make that process easier. So if you are a foundation out there thinking about how you can do these things, consider those funding models, as well as I would say flexible reporting requirements. If you can scrap the whole report and have a conversation, I'm more than happy to encourage you with that and help you walk through that process, because we already have enough in the day-to-day with paperwork and grant agreements and all of that. But it's really time for funders, and in my opinion, Tim, to focus more so on their grantees in a holistic sense, not just in the sense of like grant goals and checking things off the boxes. And those are just a couple of ways that I believe that foundations can do that.
Yeah, it's always a hard push and pull between we're going to develop these skills versus we're developing the skills because the system's structured badly. So let's acknowledge there are some flaws in the model in some ways.
Yeah.
But the basics of a grant are what? Let's actually break it down to its core. If I need to put together a grant, what does that actually mean? We're going to go into ABCs of grant writing, but I want to lead into that. So let's break it down, like even kind of go tiny bit 101, like what's the modern grant process look like now? Because it's not like back in the day where you got well, maybe it is for some of the folders and things. So actually, walk through what's a grant writing process actually look like now from almost end to end in, I don't know, a minute or two.
Of course. But first I'll start off with the funny. I had one of my, I had an 8-year-old niece ask me, what do you do for a living? And I was like, I write really fancy papers asking people funny, right? And trying to explain that, but it brought me back to the very basics, as you mentioned. So when it comes to the grant writing process, we actually have a blog out there for the folks who followed me
We
out.
sure do.
Make sure you all check that out. But it all starts with one, identifying what your priorities are. So whether that's a project or initiative, whatever your fundraising goal is that you want to be supported through institutional funding, make sure that that's first, because that's going to guide what types of grants you're looking for, what type of funding, whether that's general operating, tech assistance, or programmatic funding that you need. So really what we call here at SMP clarifying your core. So beyond mission, vision, and values, but what are our strategic priorities for the year that can be funded by grants, making sure we have a really clear picture of that. Once you have that down packed, then comes in the grant research. Oh, hold on, y'all. That's part one. Here's 1A. Make sure you're grant ready. And that's just what we call like an annual check to ensure that your organization has the capacity to not only secure grant awards, but can manage those awards. So think about your policies and procedures, your financial protocols and things like that, so that as the money comes in, you're not, things aren't just too overwhelming for you from a programmatic or internal programmatic side.
Yeah.
When you do your grant research, as I mentioned, have a very clear picture. Utilize some amazing tools. There's a few that we use just in tandem with our clients to find the best fit grants for you. And I mean, go beyond the funder, the funding opportunity, and the eligibility terms, but really do your due diligence by looking at those historical 990s to see how much they've been funding, what types of organizations they've been funding, to really form your grant strategy. And then that type of information or those insights will help you know which grants or what we call like which juice is worth the squeeze. So grant research.
And actually, can I pause on that, because I think we have a pertinent question relating to that with Kathleen, if we want to put that up.
Of course.
What's the percentage of grants, kind of like what you're talking about, the juice is worth the squeeze, versus them just kind of giving money out to people where there's not much of a process or a report or stuff like that. And Kathleen, I hope that I translated that question properly, but I think this is a nice pause for that particular one. What are you seeing as the breakdown?
Yeah, so I want to call to mind, I believe it's called the 5% rule, where foundations are required to give away 5% of their assets, and that fluctuates, we all know, from year to year. So if I had to give a percentage or a hard percentage, I would say stick to that. But then there's always what I call money behind the back door. But this is the type of funds that folks are they tend to get once that relationship is built, especially towards the end of the year. And they're like, hey, we got an extra $10,000. Where could you use this? It's general operating. All we need is a 1-page report or a conversation on your impact with this, and then we're done. Right. But as I mentioned, that's typically through relationships or somebody that knows somebody, again, still relationships, but there's some connection there. And I even had some like rapid response funds, but I haven't seen that lately. I guess I don't want to say we're in a calm space in the sector, but we're not as in a ebb and flow as we were a few years ago.
Like the COVID.
COVID and everything. But those are times where you typically see the money behind closed doors or the unrestricted kind of like surprise grants come out. But typically stick to that 5% rule. Again, this is going to be very crucial for you to check out those 990 so you can see how they fluctuate year over year. And if you are or have the time, check out other organizations similar to yours to see who's funding them, and then those grant amounts as well. It'll help inform what your ask could be for any particular RFP as well.
That's a great question, Kathleen, and more of those. Like this is such a great opportunity. So we got a few minutes before we bring Jessica on. Now you'll be able to stay with us for the wheel spin, right?
Okay. Yes, of course. Of course.
So I'll end on explain what's in the ABC. So I got a few more questions for you coming up next. Okay, so we've talked about a little bit of the process stuff. What are some kind of core skills that people could be developing, or like what's one thing that a nonprofit can start to do to just make it easier on themselves for this process?
I would definitely say build your project management skills.
Okay. Let's expand on that.
Of course. So when we talk about the grant writing process, and again, we'll talk about the ABCs later. So put a pin in that grant writing process question. There's a lot of moving parts when it comes to finding a grant that you're looking to go after, all the way to the submission piece. And even after that, once you win the grant, or even after, if you get an award declination, there's so many moving parts. So if I were to go back in my journey 10 years ago, I would definitely build my project management skills, making sure that we have not only a timeline, but a project plan. So what needs to be done by a certain date and who it needs to be completed by. In a lot of places, when it comes to grants, it's not just you as the grant writer. You actually have to work with the finance folks and the CEO and the program director to make sure that your narrative is done and tells the story in a very clear way, but also those attachments and things that we can't do in and of ourselves as grant writers, or as we shouldn't do by ourselves. So no organization is in a silo. And if you want to work collaboratively, building your project management skills would be definitely top tier. And in that, you'll learn also how to pay close attention to details. So you talked about those federal grants, and even with foundation grants, we have to pay attention to detail, especially from the RFP NOFA side, because what they're looking for essentially is how well you address the questions or the prompts in those narratives to get a better score, or to just tell a clear story that's compelling and has a higher chance of winning for sure.
Is that on my end?
I think so. Am I froze, or you look frozen? There we go. Chris, you're on mute.
Oh, I was on mute. Sorry. Tim, are you okay?
I guess that was on my end. So yeah, I got to go yell at AFP, I guess, about their Wi-Fi.
I think you're good. Let's keep it
All
rolling.
right. We're still going. Chris can always take over the interviews, but I did catch the majority of that. So I think that and so I had kind of a joiner question to help maybe continue that on. I was also going to give a little bit of a plug that I've seen this historically managed in, an Excel spreadsheet, or you have, some maybe dedicated things, but I will toot our own horn a little bit.
I know where you're going.
We've gotten better on the management side, the activity templates and the stuff like that.
Because super exciting.
We kept seeing that, and the attachments and all these little elements on even naming the grant. If you're working, you might be applying for a few things. So
at one time,
I'm gonna empower you. We're gonna end with the I want to hear folks to hear about the course, but I'm going to empower you with something. I'm going to give you a magic wand. All right, here's the magic wand right there. If you can change something that foundations do about their process to make it easier for nonprofits, what would that be?
Oh, it would be some funders are more progressive than others. So if you're a progressive funder, this is not for you. But if you're more of a traditionalist, please be more transparent with your RFPs and what you're looking for. Sometimes when we see those documents, it's not entirely clear, or you shift your priorities so quickly, but don't let the community in on those updates or shifts. So I would just say transparency from the jump, and don't assume that the community should know information that they don't know. And everybody doesn't have the connections or the insight, especially in communities where there are a lot of BIPOC-led organizations. They find out information much later than what they should. So I would say transparency from the front end. On the back end, once the grant is secured, we can remove the reports. Honestly, just call me. I can tell you exactly how we spent the money, but that's a conversation for another day. I have so many horror stories about grant reports and how we had a $5,000 grant, but a 50-page report. It can be insane. So that'll be maybe that's another episode that we can have, Tim.
Oh, yeah. No, we're going to keep coming back to this. This is such a big conversation. So I will. I'm happy that you're going to hang around for a bit.
Course.
Let's tell people what's in the ABC's course. And folks, the weather is so wild. There's so many things getting canceled. So if I'm fuzzy or if something drops out, I know Chris will dive in here. We're going to finish stuff up. But Shalia, tell us a bit about the course.
Yes. So the ABCs of grant writing is a digital toolkit / online course where you can go in and learn the fundamentals or the building blocks of grant writing. So everything that we talked about today, just in a very simple form. So anything from being grant ready, finding the right grants for your nonprofit, telling a comparative narrative. One of my favorites, the anatomy of a grant proposal, even down to how to manage your grants department with the lean team. And for those who are in the grant management side, what are those ABCs when it comes to managing your grants from start to finish? So again, that is a digital learning toolkit. So you can do all of that from the comfort of your own home while you're watching Netflix. And you have full access to not only the curriculum, but there's a private group where you can ask me questions directly in the chat room. So please make sure you're dropping your name in the comments so that you can be added to that. And I can't wait to meet and talk with you all.
Awesome. We'll bring you back in about 10 minutes.
Sounds good.
We're going to go take a quick break, and then we'll be back with Jessica Johnson.
Sounds good.
Are you signed up for our newsletter? Get the latest resources and tips, nonprofit news, and upcoming events for nonprofits and social good organizations sent right to your inbox. Make sure you get the October edition by signing up now at neon1.com/newsletter.
Hi, Jessica. How are you? Oh, I think you're on. Yes, there you are. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I am good. I'm holding strong here at the AFP offices, and I'm excited to bring you on because I've been working with you in a lot of different capacities over the years. And one of the things that you've helped me learn is just the importance of communication and expectation setting and transparency. And so I'm excited for our chat today. But tell folks, just like we heard from Shalia and her story, what's your origin story? How did you come to Neon One, actually?
Sure. So I actually started out as a client of Arts People back before Neon One existed. And I have been working in nonprofit development and marketing for several years. And one of the organizations I worked with used Arts People for ticketing and fundraising. That was our primary software. I relocated to Asheville, North Carolina, and in that process had connected with the support manager of Arts People who reached out because they were hiring, and it just was a lucky fit for me. So I started working with the support team then, and then Neon One acquired Arts People, and my organization, I run a small playwrights theater locally, and
we're going to talk about some of that. So
we still use Arts People and Neon Pay. So I'm still a client and also work here.
Love it. And I think that's some of the folks that I love talking to the most too, because it's like we get to live it. And so with that said, one of the things that we've talked about is the differences that sometimes get missed between, they hear the word support, somebody hears the word support, and that can mean a lot of different things to different people. Let's actually break up and this process, I have to say, folks, is going to be similar for a lot of technology companies. So while we are going to talk about it from our perspective, this is something that you can consider no matter what. So Jessica, somebody comes on, they're going to use a product with a technology company like Neon One. What is the difference between something like onboarding and implementation and ongoing technical support?
Yeah, so with Neon One specifically, we do have, an implementation or onboarding process where you're working with a direct individual to kind of help you set up your system, or at least set some basic parameters and determine which areas of which pieces of software you will and won't be using. Once you've gotten past that point of the initial setup process, then with Neon One and with a lot of tech companies, kind of whether you're using Neon One or not, you'll move on to the support department. However, there are a lot of self-help resources, and I know a lot of folks kind of run into I don't know where to start, or, okay, we've got this software and now we've got to train our team, or, we have these questions and we've been given a bunch of resources and we don't know which one to use. And so really we do try to encourage folks to self-help or use our academy and other resources, and then come to the support team if you have a question you can't find an answer to, or if you really are stuck on something or just need a quick answer to something, because what you experience with whether it's Neon One or any other tech company in terms of support is that you're using a piece of software that our company has provided, but from our perspective and from, like the support team or anyone at Neon One, for example, we don't know your company or your business as well as you do. So we're trying to help you, but we're also learning a little bit about you as we do that. And so that's why we really encourage kind of the self-guided aspect of things, because you all know best your organization and the work that you do. And so we say all the time, we'll get the same question 10 times a day, but every answer, all 10 of those answers are different, because the nonprofit sector is huge. And there are so many different types of nonprofits that use our software differently, even if they have the same exact software. So we're learning all the time with those organizations.
Just as a quick aside, speaking of AFP, when I was at their big conference in Toronto, I met a company where their kind of premise was like, you can make anything that you want. The database can be whatever you want. And I said, I think you're going to have a problem in a few months when somebody writes the word campaign down and you have 12 different interpretations of what that thing means. Mm-hmm. So that kind of leads into, how would you suggest people, when they're facing what they think is a tech issue, they're struggling, they went through the guide, they did this, what is the best way to actually tackle a tech issue when you're confronting an honest to goodness thing that you just are like, I don't see it in the guide, I can't figure this out, what do I do? Do you pick up the phone and start calling immediately? And
I would not recommend that necessarily. I do think that there are definitely times that a phone call is helpful. Yeah. If you're running into an issue though, and you just can't find an answer, or it's something that you think is a tech problem, like an actual issue with the software, all of that, the most efficient way to get help is really to kind of submit a support ticket, so we can either get screenshots from you, or we can schedule a screen share call, or so we've got, so we're all speaking the same language, basically. As you use campaign as a good example, that word means so many different things to so many different people. And we use it in one specific way within our software. But that doesn't necessarily mean your organization uses it that way. And so if you're reaching out and just saying like, help, I'm having trouble with the campaign, we might respond with how our technology uses the word campaign and not necessarily how you use it. So as long as we can get the context of what you're talking about, again, screenshots are super helpful, or describing steps that you took to get to where you are. Those kinds of things will really help orient our team, who again are familiar with our software, but not necessarily with your organization. And so we're always trying to be on the same page as the client, depending on where they're coming from.
One of the most helpful things that I learned, because I feel like I'm a better client of other technology companies because I work here. And if I run into an issue, I love always trying to zero in, okay, where's the ID of something, right? Like if it's a specific, submission, or if it's a form or something, like almost everything has an ID. And so that always helps too.
Sending URLs if you're looking at a specific URL or a page, that kind of thing. Also, anything that you can give us that points us directly to what you're looking at.
Yeah. Well, and I do want to give you a shout out. I didn't put it into the show notes, but you also have been chairing our Neon Cares committee. And so I do want to put you on the spot, a little bit unprepared, so you can give whatever answer. But tell people the work that we're doing with Neon Cares, and because you've done such an amazing job kind of stewarding that through. What's that little program that you can tell?
Thanks, Tim. I love the Neon Cares committee. It's definitely something that I care a lot about. So Neon Cares is Neon One's corporate social responsibility committee, and we're able to make financial contributions to nonprofits that have been nominated by our colleagues at Neon One. They can be clients or not. They're organizations that we're passionate about, that we have volunteered at or worked with directly, or maybe they're organizations that we've just heard about, or a family or friend, happens to be supporting that organization and is asking for extra help. And so as a committee, we're able to review those submissions quarterly and send out some small contributions to organizations as it's sort of a nice little surprise to them. And it's also really awesome to be able to hear about so many different nonprofits. The majority of the people we work with at Neon One are either coming from a nonprofit background, or have volunteered or currently volunteer at a specific organization. So we all, I think, have our own passions and own interests within the nonprofit sector. And it's really nice to be able to do those kind of financial contributions. We're also working on some other activities like organized volunteer days and things. So as a committee, we're continuing to expand Neon One's corporate social responsibility.
And you help roll through some pilot items like our new vision for the Generosity Awards. We sent those notifications out to a select group of folks yesterday. So be on the lookout at Generosity Exchange, folks, for more information and a special ceremony on Giving Tuesday. So Jessica, I do need to end before we bring Shalia back on and we spin that wheel. And folks, come on, let's get some comments in there. I do want, and Shalia, you can hang for this one. I gotta ask. You gotta tell people about the Wizard of Oz thing that you were telling me about. Sure,
yeah. So I've been working at an organization called Land of Oz. It's in Beach Mountain, North Carolina. It's a 3-week event that happens every September. So I actually just got back a couple of days ago to my home base, and it is a live interactive Wizard of Oz experience that is based on the movie. So as guests, you come in on top of this beautiful mountain and you walk through our rebuilt Kansas, the Gale family farmhouse. You see a couple of shows and then continue through, a man-made tornado. And then you end up on the Yellow Brick Road. And you walk along the Yellow Brick Road. Again, you meet the characters and there are performances along it. And you end at Emerald City where you see the wizard and all sorts of things. And again, have a final show. They're singing and dancing and it's really, really special. So many people come there and it's incredible to be a very tiny piece of making some magic for, families and generations of folks that have come over and over the years.
And to connect it back to what Shalia and I were talking about, what is your role in that production?
Me. I'm the production stage manager, so I run all the shows. Speaking of project management.
It's the connection. There we go.
Listen, I am a huge advocate of project management. Anything you can pull up there. I also have been a grant writer at several nonprofits, and having whether you use an Excel sheet, Google Sheets, a free tool, a paid tool, whatever it is, having something to help you keep track of everything is so, so important in so many aspects of the nonprofit sector, whether it's, grant writing or something more like running a show.
Well, speaking of running shows, Chris is keeping us on time. So
this has been awesome. Thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you, Jessica. Let's bring up the wheel. We'll all spin it together here. I did want to acknowledge there was another commenter who didn't appear in our StreamYard comments, but is on the wheel now. So I got you.
I never trust the metrics that I see on StreamYard anyway, in terms of that. There's so many more people actually watching and they just like to lurk. So let's see the wheel go.
Let's take it for a spin.
Who wants to win it?
Such a cool prize this month. I love this. Oh.
Up. I think we know. Hey!
Congratulations, Kiana Prude. So just send one of us a DM. You can DM me or Tim.
I would suggest Chris. I am going to be in this stuff, but we are going to get this executed by. Let's just be realistic about expectation setting. We're going to get it to you in September 30th or October the first week. We will work that out with Shalia on how to do that.
Jessica and I are laughing because we are in the heart of this storm now, and yet it's Tim's internet connection that has been failing minutes or so. But we want to say thank you for tuning in to this episode 9 of Generosity Experience Live, and we will see you back on October 10th, Tim, for a very special GX preview edition of the show. Thank you guys for being here, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you. See y'all soon.
Join us for a special episode of Generosity Experience Live, episode 10, on Thursday, October 10th, as we offer a special preview of what you can expect at Generosity Exchange 2024. We'll have surprise special guests and prize giveaways for GX registrants. Follow the link in the comments and click attending to be reminded as the show approaches.
Thanks for watching Neon One on YouTube. Subscribe to keep up with all our upcoming videos, and check out another video right here.